I cringed so much while reading this book because that's how well it was written. Hey guys, I'm here today to review Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. This is the first book in her Throne of Glass series. It's the first book I've ever read by this author, and I was debating on whether or not to do a review on this. I figured that most people in the YouTube book community have already read the books and watched other videos, but now and then I do find YouTubers who create videos talking about popular series that they haven't yet read. And for me, I hadn't read these because I was always in the middle of another series, and I can't believe I haven't picked up Throne of Glass yet until like 2 weeks ago. I'll start off by giving a quick character synopsis. We have Celaena Sardothien, and she is our protagonist. She is an assassin who had been sent to a death camp, and it's a salt mine, and she's treated like an animal there, like an abused animal. She's been really well trained to be an assassin by the very best since she was 8 years old when her parents died. And it wasn't her choice. When you're a child and you have nowhere to go, the first person to extend a hand to you, you can't really say no. She had special treatment by the people who were running the salt mines, and I mean, they were like abusing her extra hard. They whipped her so hard that they wanted to make sure that the gashes would never completely close and like people would die of infection and stuff. And if that wasn't bad enough, she also talked about how they would use the salt that she was forced to mine and rub that into her wounds. Like, can you imagine like thick gashes, just open wounds on your back? And I can't even imagine having to put salt in like a paper cut. It says a lot about her perseverance and her will to live. The fact that she survived in Endovir for a year, whereas most people there don't last more than a month. Based upon this information, we already know that there's something special about her, that she's only 17 years old and she's able to survive this death camp. The Crown Prince Dorian travels with Kale to Endovir to find Celaena, and they're tracking her down to be the king's assassin. And she's not the only one though. They have tracked down 23 of them, and they're all forced to compete against one another, and the last one standing is going to be the king's assassin. And the reason why Celaena agreed to this was because she wanted her freedom. Initially, the deal that Dorian made her was that after you serve my father for 5 years, he'll grant you your freedom, and the time that you're serving him, you're getting a generous salary. Celaena was desperate because she probably had a few days left in her. Who knows, because throughout the story she was saying there's no way she could survive another winter in Endovir. So she had to take this offer even though she despises the king. So she was pretending to be a jewel thief, so this way all the men would underestimate her and she'd have that element of surprise at the end. There's a series of tests that they went through, from like hand-eye coordination. They were shooting arrows at targets that were like ridiculously far, to climbing up the castle wall. Whoever made it to the flag first would win. The person who does the worst at each competition would be eliminated and they'd be sent back to where they came from. For Celaena, that's not an option because she'd be sent back to the death camp, and while the other thieves and soldiers, they'd just go back to doing whatever it was they were doing. So the stakes aren't as high for them. So she did well in all of her competitions, but she had to like stay in the middle of the pack. Like when they were running, she'd be in the middle. She didn't want to come off as like a really great runner. Shooting arrows, she did just well enough to not be the worst one, but she wasn't the best. She could have done really well at the test where they were climbing up the castle wall, but again, she was following Kale's instruction to stay in the middle, just keep a low profile, but she didn't really do that when she decided to save Nox. So she kind of like started all over again because she jumped down to save him. In another competition, they had to arrange poisons from least dangerous to the most, and that one kind of had her a little stumped because there was like one glass that was clear and it looked like water and it didn't smell or like anything. So, but luckily things worked out for her. She had a little help from Queen Elena, who was like the first princess of Adarlan, and you don't know at this point why the ghost of Elena has come back to assist her. So this is kind of where like the fantasy starts. When I first picked up the book, it said like, USA Today said it's a must-read for lovers of epic fantasy and fairy tales. I didn't see the fairy tale in this or the epic fantasy. I mean, I saw like a very real kind of storyline. Nothing was magical or great about it. But when she gets a visit from the ghost of Queen Elena, you kind of start to see the fantasy of it all. The competition seems straightforward enough, though the scary thing is that the champions started turning up dead. They'd find them beheaded and the brain is taken out and the vital organs like heart and like lungs or whatever. And it was like very ritualistic. You'd find these word marks. At this point, Kale is trying really hard to get to the bottom of this, finding out who is responsible. And it seems that it would make sense that the champions would eliminate one another just to, I guess, eliminate their competition, and they didn't want to slowly wait for one person at a time to get sent out of the competition from just like doing the tests. Pretty evident that they were getting killed by some sort of beast because of the way they were ripped apart. Selena is freaking out and she just can't even sleep at night because she thinks that someone's gonna sneak up on her and kill her in the same way. By the time there were only 4 champions left, the king had called for the dueling to begin. And it was like rigged from the start because Selena had to go second, so it was Kane and like one other person, and then Selena went against Grave. And she didn't even get a break from her first duel, and then she had to go against Kane, who was like the toughest competitor. If that wasn't enough, Duke Parrington decided to poison her. So she had bloodbane in her wine. They were supposed to drink wine like in between their duels, and so it would give her like hallucinations and make her dizzy and sick. So it looked like she got her butt kicked, but really like she was completely unable to control her mind and body. I'm not used to reading anything with such violence, and like when they described him kicking her shoulder out of place, like it became dislocated, and then he kicked it again and relocated it, and like slamming her face on the tile on the ground or whatever. I was just like cringing, and I stand to read her failing journey. It was just like, I was worried about Selena having to fight Kane in the first place, even without being poisoned, because, you know, he's got like all the strength from the previous champions that he's killed, and he's got like the demon inside him and the help of magic. Like, how is this scrawny little assassin supposed to take him out? I mean, yeah, she's tough and she has a reputation, but her body is weak still because of the time that she spent in Endovir. So I was already like nervous about her duel, and then when she was like, she didn't even have a chance once she was poisoned. I just really didn't want to read anymore, but I kind of like plowed through it just because I couldn't not finish it. There to just defeat her and become the king's assassin, he wanted to kill her. Like, he was not fighting just to win. There were so many chances where he could have just like pointed the blade at her throat and ended it there, because they had to have, in order to win, they had to have their opponent in a position where they were at, you know, certain death. So he had plenty of opportunities since he was like throwing her around and kicking her across the field. He didn't have to continue fighting, but it was an execution. Nehemia came to the rescue right when it seemed like Selena was gonna die. Like, she went through all of this for nothing. She came here to die. And because she was hallucinating, this poison allowed her to see things from other realms, and she was able to see Queen Elena once again, and Elena was able to help her not fight and protect her, but to at least drain the bloodbane out of her system so that she could think straight again and have control of her mind and body. But at this point, she's like inches away from death. Like, she's been beaten so badly, what good is thinking straight at this point? She was only fighting with a staff that Nehemia gave her because they wanted to prove a point that even with wood, they had like more strength than their opponents, so she could use like a wooden staff and beat some guy with a sword. And she had the broken staff, and she was able to like stab it into Kane and make him bleed, and she had won. Yay! Okay, can you guys explain how it is that the captain of the guard has never killed before. Like, he was so deeply shocked. You would think he killed like an innocent child the way he reacted. Like, he hadn't picked up his sword in days and he was like walking around like a zombie because he killed someone for the first time. Like, he works for the king who just kind of like makes a living out of slaughtering hundreds of people just because he wanted more power. Like, how is it that Cale has never killed anyone? Like, that made no sense to me. But anyway, so now Celaena is the king's assassin officially. Aside from the main storyline, which was like the competition to become the king's assassin, there's this whole like side story that's a love triangle between Celaena and Prince Dorian and Cale. And she likes them both, but I think she's had more fun flirting with the prince. Though I'm not sure why, because I think Cale is like way more hardcore. But she shares like an intellectual bond with Dorian because they both really like to read. And Celaena is with Dorian and Cale. There's this huge contrast within her own character. Like, she's this deadly assassin that everyone in the country knows. Everyone knows her name. But then when she's with these men, she's so vulnerable and so emotional. And, you know, she wants to be with Dorian, but at the same time she kind of like flirts with Cale too. And I like that the author wrote her character this way. It seems a little strange, but at the same time, I like it that she is not a two-dimensional character. That while she has a rough side to her, a very rough side, she still has the ability to love and wants love, and she wants to be happy. And it shows that she's only an assassin because she has to do what she has to do to survive. And it just kind of like makes her really likable, in my opinion. The book isn't extremely long, but I finished it rather quickly, and I'm already on to the second one. I started that like 10 minutes before I sat down to do this video. I give this book 4.5 out of 5 stars. Reason being is that I would have given it 5 out of 5 stars if there was like more fantasy elements in the story, because that's what I was led to believe, I guess, reading other reviews and stuff. It's not disappointing, it's just that it's getting there, but it's not quite there yet. But I do highly recommend it to anyone who's put it off because you're not sure if you wanted to get into the series, because it is a long series and the books aren't extremely short, but they're not extremely long. But if you weren't sure about it, I would totally recommend it. Don't take my word for it. Read it for yourself and let me know what you think of it. Thanks for watching. Bye!